we were talking about the skepticism that New York Times and Maggie Haberman has over Donald Trump when he first said that there is evidence that the virus escaped from a lab. Here's what she says.
This matters. Understanding where coronavirus and how the pandemic began matters. A lot of the discussion about the lab leak, I think, was clouded early on because there was the suggestion by some that it was somehow a Chinese weapon that caused this. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a lab accident. But we've come a long way from people dismissing this as a conspiracy theory to a lot of people taking this seriously, Maggie.
By the way, when Trump and Pompeo said that they believe they have evidence that came from a lab, did they say there's evidence it's a weapon? Did they say that? They didn't. So he made up what Donald Trump never said and then addressed what he didn't say and then said, that's not what we're talking about here. Did Pompeo say it was a weapon? Did Trump say it was a weapon? Anyway, so that's the setup. As you can see, the bias is right there. And then Maggie Haberman answers.
We have, John, and look, I do think it's important to remember that part of the issue when this was first being reported on and discussed back a few months after the pandemic had begun was that then President Trump and Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, both suggested they had seen evidence that this was formed in a lab, and they also suggested it was not released on purpose, but they refused to release the evidence showing what it was. And so because of that, that made this instantly political. I think that there was, example 1000.
That made it instantly political. Example 1000. They're not even embarrassed. They're not even ashamed. This thing rages around the world, kills 3.5 million people so far, 600,000 Americans so far. But getting to the bottom of it was not something you were particularly interested in doing because Donald Trump suggested it might have come from a lab. Therefore, it didn't come from a lab. That's just pathetic. And you're conceding that if you don't trust a source, you're not going to act on it. We don't trust you. The New York Times has not endorsed a Republican for president since 1956, was it? Washington Post has never, ever in its history endorsed a Republican for president. Ever. But you don't trust Donald Trump, so therefore when Donald Trump says that this thing might have come from a lab, you're not going to pay any attention to it because it came out of Donald Trump's mouth. Do you think you've earned credibility over the years? Do you think you've earned credibility over the years? You got Pulitzers for this BS Trump collusion story. Did you give them back? Were you at least embarrassed when the Mueller report came back and didn't confirm your findings? No. Went on to the next story. And don't get me started on this systemic racism thing. You don't report that the police kill more unarmed whites than unarmed blacks. You don't report that cops are more hesitant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. You don't talk about the tiny fraction of 1% that is represented by unarmed blacks when you look at the total of the average 7,000 black homicide victims in recent years. You don't even suggest that perhaps, maybe, possibly, to couch it the way Dr. Fauci would, possibly, maybe, perhaps, that some of these could have been avoided had the civilian/suspects complied. You never even bring it up. Pick up the newspaper on Monday, Chicago newspaper on Monday. 50 people shot last weekend. How much time did you spend on that? Year to year, homicides up in virtually every big city in America. Do you think maybe, just maybe, there might be a connection between that and this bogus narrative of systemic racism that you've been pushing? Are you even curious about that? Do you care about the Ferguson effect / Minneapolis effect / George Floyd effect? Do you care about the fact that cops are pulling back? Do you care about the fact that cops are retiring early? And you have the nerve to say you didn't track down and didn't take seriously the rumor, suggestion, allegation that the coronavirus escaped from a lab in Wuhan because you didn't like Donald Trump. A woman on The View says, well, the reason we didn't take it seriously is because Donald Trump is a racist. And when Donald Trump said it, he was just promoting his racist ideology, so therefore we didn't... Systemic racism. Getting people killed.